if you kind of are having chronic gut issues, I think it's a good place to start because so many people have it. And I found that I had it, and like then it sent me on a journey of like, wow, okay, I just use supplements to heal me. What if I could make fitness-based supplements that could actually help people heal and not hurt them? And so that's why like our mission and our motto at Kono is like, if someone asks me what I do, I say we help people heal by putting health first.
You're listening to the Clean Kitchen Podcast with Kyle and Kevin Fitzgerald. Welcome back to another episode of the Clean Kitchen Podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Alex Conley, who I actually had the pleasure of meeting in person a few weeks ago when he was visiting Florida. But Alex is the founder of Kono Nutrition, where he makes all different supplements and fitness products like protein powders, electrolytes, and a few other supplements, which we will get into. But Alex, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too. Really enjoyed spending time with you and connecting and having some good conversations here while you were here in Florida. And I was like, you know what? This is the perfect person to have on the Clean Kitchen Podcast and have a conversation about a lot of the things that we were talking about while we were in person, including your story. I think I remember when you were talking to me about your story, it's super, super powerful. And it's not something you hear a lot from other people, especially even in the health and wellness space. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to get started by just, kind of sharing your story, starting wherever you want to start and take us wherever you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's kind of funny, like when we first connected and everyone in the health space and the holistic health space, it's like, what's your story? It's like we all have our own version of the same story, which is that we were sick at some point. And then we usually, had to figure out how to do things the wrong way in order to figure out how to do things the right way. But for me, it was a unique path. And it was 3 weeks before my 4th birthday, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And so health became, the most important thing in the world to me overnight as a little boy. So it was a very different, unique journey compared to most people. And with leukemia, basically the worst thing that can happen is you get sick or illness because you have no white blood cells. And that happened to me many times. Specifically, I had the chicken pox and I spent 3 months in the hospital. And there was times where my parents, didn't think that I was going to make it. So I had a very interesting health journey and childhood and upbringing. And it just, really led me to look into everything. And my parents started to look into everything in the health space at an early age. And then it just kind of sent me on a totally different trajectory in life. And happy to, pause here and answer any questions about that experience, because I know it was, there's a lot in that.
Yeah. So was it so you got diagnosed and then you did chemotherapy, right?
I did 4 years of chemotherapy. So it was like very, very hard and takes a toll on the body. And, typically, oftentimes, even it's the chemo that kills people and not the actual cancer, because it's such an aggressive treatment where honestly, in the next 10 years, the next decade, like the way that medicine's going, chemo will probably be a thing of the past. And luckily, it works very well for childhood cancers, and children are super resilient. And so I think that's partial to it, and specifically with blood cancers like leukemia. And so luckily, I survived it and I got through it, but it was 4 years of chemotherapy. And then, so that was at 4 years old when I started. And then at the age of 12, it was actually my 12th birthday when they officially announced me cancer-free. So it was a very long journey.
Wow. Do you know why that is? Like why chemotherapy is more effective on children's cancer or children's problems? Or?
It's truly just like specific on the cancer as well. Yeah. And so I know that with blood cancers like lymphoma and leukemia, chemo has been proven to be a little bit more effective. So the survival rates when I was diagnosed, which was in 1998, was around 80%. And now it's all the way up to around 94%. And that's using chemo as a treatment. So it's not to say that it doesn't have its role and that Western medicine is all bad, right? Because I have some appreciation for it. And obviously I'm here today because of it. But where I see medicine going now is more like T-cell treatments for this. So they're using your body's own T-cells, which are kind of like the immune warriors, to initiate an immune response within your own body that attacks the cancer versus, basically just poisoning and killing everything, which is what chemo does. So obviously it kills the cancer, but it kills everything in the process. So destroyed my gut microbiome, destroyed a lot of my healthy cells. And that's why you feel like garbage. It makes you puke a lot. So like a lot of my childhood memories are just like sitting in a room playing video games in the hospital while getting a chemo IV drip, just like throwing up all day.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing that you've gone through that. You have that perspective now, looking back on it. But I'm glad you mentioned too that there is this benefit and power that doctors have in Western medicine, because I think a lot of people do get lost, especially recently. A lot of the conversation tends to be doctors are all good or it's all bad,
Mhm.
and that's something that's really tough to balance in that conversation. How do you work through that, having been someone that saw the benefits of Western medicine?
Totally. I mean, I think that we swung so far in the direction of like only focusing on mostly like acute issues, and we just completely ignored the chronic disease, epidemic that's happening.
Mhm.
And so that's really where I see the powerful use cases in like acute issues, like you break a bone or you have cancer or you do something like that. But I still very much take the approach of like the best way to beat disease is to prevent it in the first place.
Mhm.
And so that's like the most important thing that we can possibly do is focus on prevention. And then also there's like a really unique saying in Chinese medicine that basically talks about the difference between holistic health and Western medicine. And it's like Western medicine is more like the doctor is a mechanic,
Mhm.
right? So they're just focusing on like parts because we have now subdivided the human body into over like 100 different subspecialties. So when doctors go to med school, they have over 100 different things to choose from now of what they want to specialize in. And it's basically just like a body part. Like I'm an ear doctor, I'm a nose doctor. It's like it's so specialized. And so we've divided the body into parts, like treating it like a mechanic treats a car. Whereas holistic health is like the doctor is a gardener and
Mhm.
they focus on the soil and they focus on, the ecosystem as a whole. And that's how we should be treating the body, in my opinion. And so it's like a totally different approach. And for sure, there's times to utilize a mechanic, but the best way to like really beat and prevent disease is to be the gardener.
I love that. So if you've listened to Alex before, if this is not your first time listening to Alex, you're going to quickly realize that Alex is a wizard with words. That was one of my immediate takeaways. You have all of these sayings and stories that you tell that I just love, and I wrote down one that I wanted you to talk about more.
Mm.
And I forget exactly which podcast it came from, but you said life qualified me in regards to you coming on a podcast like this and talking about health. You obviously have some education going through exercise and some sports science there, but you're not an MD by any means. Kyle is not an MD. I'm not an MD. None of us are sitting here and we're talking about health and nutrition. So when you say something like life qualified me, what do you mean by that?
It's probably like my favorite conversation to have, actually. So thanks for bringing that up because I feel like there's so many people on social media right now, and it's like, who do you actually listen to? And we oftentimes will like go see a doctor that gives us diet advice, and the doctor is not actually taking their own advice, right? They're like super overweight or obese and unhealthy. And oftentimes, doctors spent less than 2 weeks out of 12 years learning about nutrition. So it's like it's not necessarily the only thing that qualifies you. And for me, it's like my story qualified me. Like I've been through it. I can empathize with people that are sick. I know what it's like to feel sick, and I know what it's like to feel healthy. And so like life is the ultimate qualification, and your experiences can truly qualify you more than anything. And so I think it's kind of overvalued the like, letters behind people's names and things like that. And it's like I'm just telling my story. I'm speaking from my own experience. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can possibly do.
Yeah, I think it's more powerful than going through school. Obviously, there's a lot of benefit to that, and I don't mean to dismiss it by any means. Kyle and I both have dealt with Crohn's disease personally, and that's what inspired
Mm.
our story. That's why we're both here telling our story and giving others a platform to tell theirs. So you do get the benefit of understanding exactly what foods, how they can impact your body when you have to go through something like that. So maybe getting back into your story a little bit more now. So you go through this incredible experience at age 12. You finally are declared cancer free, which is amazing. Is food something that's been an important part of your life ever since then, or what's your relationship with food?
Yeah, it's funny because I almost went on like a little bit of a bender after I was like, able to live freely.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I went on, I played 3 sports. I lived a normal childhood. Like my parents did such a good job of just like allowing me to have freedom and experience life for what it is. And so I played 3 sports in high school. I lived on Jack in the Box tacos and fast food, and like learn again, like had to do things the wrong way. And then I went to college. I joined a fraternity. I was drinking 3 to 4 times a week. And it's like one of these things that I also don't regret though, because it like sent me down such a beautiful path in my life. And again, just like life qualified me, because what happened is like I got sick again, and it's almost like I had to learn this lesson one more time because I was so young when it first happened. And so I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. I got exposed to mold living in the fraternity. So that was really the root of it. And yeah, IBS, like had severe gut issues, had no clue what was going on. And I was studying exercise physiology at the time. So I was really like focused on my fitness, but not my health. Right. And there's such a big difference between being fit and being healthy. And just because you're fit doesn't mean you're healthy. And like I lived through that where I was like almost 5% body fat, like completely shredded in the world of bodybuilding, focused on that. I was like only worried about the biomechanics and the lifting and the aspect of fitness. And so it really just like forced me to slow down and to pivot into this world of holistic health. And the way that happened is I was working at GNC at the time, the classic supplement store. And I always tell people like my bookshelf as a college student was full of supplements and not books. Like I was obsessed, like obsessed with learning about it. But I was taking all the artificial fitness supplements. And I think that was a huge part that led me down the path of illness, unfortunately, and like of IBS and of gut issues and not knowing what was going on. But my boss at GNC kind of had the exact opposite view that I had at the time. So she was a clinical herbalist. And so she was really teaching me and giving me books around like how, our ancestors used to heal through ailments. And I was taking nutrition courses in college and like not learning anything about that. So then I kind of became fascinated with learning from her. And I kind of just like really pivoted my stance and started trying to heal myself, and was able to do that through years of taking different supplements and herbs and learning about herbal medicine and functional medicine.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic that it's like the supplements that you take like before you go to the gym or after you go to the gym, whether it's, a pre-workout or a post-workout protein shake, it's like they're loaded with all these artificial sweeteners and artificial ingredients and gums and emulsifiers, and the list goes on and on and on. But I just think it's kind of crazy. And like you said, like we look at, like as a society, I guess we look at someone that's in shape or basically like not fat or not like seriously sick, and then we label that as like healthy. Even though they may not be completely healthy on the inside.
Yeah, man, that was my story. Like, again, like I was able to live through that. And that was a huge passion for me starting the business, was because I was like you said, like, why would I had this light bulb moment of like, why would I go do something so good for my health? Possibly one of the best things you could ever do for your health is like developing a movement routine and learning how to move your body and learning how to lift weights and resistance train and do cardio. And like all of these things are essential for health. And then I'm just like absolutely destroying it by taking a pre-workout with 400 milligrams of caffeine in it. Yeah. And so what I found is like, and it's like what I found is just like, unfortunately, it's really sad where like the fitness industry took over the supplement space to like being marketed as like a guilt-free tasty treat and something that just like tastes really good and makes you look cool or look better, versus what a supplement actually is. And a supplement literally means in addition to. So it's like, let's master the basics first, then take a supplement, which should be adding to your health, not taking away from it, especially when you're doing something so good for your health, like going to the gym.
Yeah. So I guess going off that, like what, in your opinion, like what would be the basics, like the basics to health and living a healthy life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that I'll start with what I usually say is like, again, I'm such a fan of like in addition to, because I think what happens when most people go on their health journey is they automatically think that things are being taken away from them. And it's almost like a psychology game, right? Where people are like, oh my gosh, I have to give up this, 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 and this, and I have to start doing this. And it seems overwhelming to the point where people just go, screw it, I'm just going to stay in my comfort zone because it feels like too out of reach. And so the first thing that I would do is just like start adding in foods that'll help you heal. And what happens over time is it just like slowly changes your physiology, slowly changes your microbiome. So like start getting in a little bit more prebiotic fibers to feed the probiotics in your gut, whether it's just organic fruits and vegetables, and things of colors. And it's just like, that's the basics to me, is just like the food that you eat is like in addition to, right? So it's like, how can I just add in a few more things to where I'm not totally drastically changing my lifestyle? And then it's going to be too much of a change to where it's overwhelming. So I think it's like finding an exercise routine that you really enjoy, because it's like the best one is the one that you're going to do. And so it's like, there's definitely some power to that, of just like exploring different options. Like your movement practice is such a personal thing. Like people are so different, whether it's yoga, whether it's Pilates, whether it's strength training, running, like no matter what it is, the one that you're going to do and the one that you enjoy the most is the best one. And then how can you get more nutrient rich foods? And for me, again, I'm not huge on like the calories and the macros, but I'm big on like the nutrients. And I think we really align on that. And so I think it's important to like focus on the sourcing of foods. And so it's like, is it organic? Is it regenerative? Like, how can I get the best possible sourcing and the most possible nutrients to nourish my body? Because then that's what actually elicits change, and you start to feel a little bit better. And then it makes you want to do more of it. And it's not so overwhelming to just like have to drastically change everything.
You've heard us talk about it before, the importance of protein. Good general rule of thumb is try to get 1 gram per pound of high quality protein every single day. Protein powders make it much easier to get the amount of protein you actually need. Problem with that is most protein powders have high levels of lead, pesticides, a bunch of other stuff you don't actually want in your body. And that's why I trust the PW1 whey protein from Peori. Their entire brand is built around the idea of testing everything with full transparency. So it's pure because they show you the data. Every batch of Peori, PW1 is third-party tested against more than 200 contaminants and is Clean Label Project certified. Every product has a QR code so that you can scan it and view your specific batch test results. PW1 is free from hormones, GMOs, pesticides, soy, gluten, and it delivers 21 grams of protein per serving. Do what I do. Add Peori PW1 whey protein to your routine now. You get an amazing 20% off, or if you choose the already discounted subscription, you get almost a third off the price. It's available when you visit my exclusive URL, peori.com/cleankitchen. Use my promo code CLEANKITCHEN, or you can save 20% off when you make a one-time purchase. Go to Peori, PUORI.com/cleankitchen. Don't wait. Go check it out right now. Peori.com/cleankitchen. That's such a powerful way to look at that. I've never really heard someone describe changing your health as the in addition to mindset, where adding in good food or adding in a workout routine. It's always swap this out and swap that in, or cut this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of that. But it is a negative connotation. And I'm sure there's some underlying brain technology or brain thoughts that are going on that's like, oh, this is not good when I have to cut things out that I enjoy. So the adding to, I really, really like that concept. But maybe talking about macros and calories, because that's the first thing that people hear when they start Googling how to be healthy. What's your general mentality on that? And talk us through maybe how you approach that.
Yeah. I think that there's no doubt that it's important. Like calories and macros have some effect. Obviously, you can't just eat like 100% carbs within your calorie range and still be fine, right? It's like you're still going to have issues. So like obviously a balanced diet is super important. And specifically like protein is having a moment right now, but I think it's for fair reasons, right? Where like all the research that I've seen for both men and women, like I would recommend in that 0.6 grams to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And so really that's the only macro that I ever truly focus on, is like I'll try to hit a protein goal. And then outside of that, I kind of view my carb intake with how much I've moved. And so I don't necessarily think that like carbs are the enemy. I think that they've been made the enemy because of the lack of movement, right? Like carbs are that instant fuel source for us. And when people aren't moving, it's like your body doesn't know what to do with it. So then it stores it as glucose, unfortunately. So it's not like a carb epidemic. It's like a lack of movement epidemic that we're in, unfortunately. And also, again, like the type of carbohydrates really matter. So with that, like, yes, I do think they matter. No, I don't obsess over my calories or macros. And I'll tell you the biggest reason why. So your body doesn't count calories, right? Like we've been taught to count calories. So we've been taught to like look at the back of a package and that really matters. But the most interesting thing that I found based on the research is we have this thing in the body that's called the post-ingestive feedback loop. And it's your brain and your gut and your body's communication pathway of basically trying to understand the caloric value of a certain food. And the thing that throws off the post-ingestive feedback loop is actually flavors. So this is why food scientists are paid so much to develop incredible flavors, because what the flavors do is flavors are indicative of nutrients. So we're designed to eat intuitively as humans. This is why, like, when people came over on the Mayflower or whatever it was and got scurvy, they were craving vitamin C, right? And so their body knew that like scurvy was a lack of vitamin C, and they started having these intense cravings for like lemon and oranges and citrus fruits. So we're intuitively designed to eat, no nutrients based on flavors. And what happens is when you consume a flavor that doesn't have the nutrient associated with it, is you send this post-ingestive feedback loop for a whirl, because what it does is it triggers your dopamine signals, but not your satiety signals. And so your body gets super confused. And the prime example that I can give is like a Coca-Cola. People don't want to drink, a glass of water with 55 grams of sugar. Like that wouldn't make you addicted to it. So it's not actually the sugar that people are addicted to, it's the flavors. So the flavor profiles are what like people really have to worry about, and what gets us over consuming foods and not able to trust our body's own signals and its own satiety signals to count its calories the way it properly should. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It feels like today's food, if you go in the grocery store, is closer to chemicals than it is food. Like if you were just to look at the ingredients that are in there, like you said, they've been engineered to optimize for consumption. And that's what it really is when it gets down to that. So it's kind of amazing. I want to get back into your story too. So you're working at GNC and you meet your bosses is all into kind of this holistic approach. Then what's the link? How does that go from there to Kono Nutrition? Help fill in the gaps there.
Yeah, man, I just felt so bad, basically. Like I knew that there was a better way to live. And so I just started seeking answers. And the more that I just like turned my diet away from the counting macros and the counting calories, because like, again, I was just in the world of fitness. So I was like, if it fits in my caloric intake for today, then I can kind of eat whatever I want. And I wasn't necessarily eating bad, but I was eating like the classic fitness diet of just like chicken, broccoli, rice, sweet potatoes, but then like piling it on with some teriyaki sauce and stuff like that. It was just like, and essentially, I think what happened for me is I was so overworking and undernourished, right? Because I wasn't focused on actually getting like a wide variety of nutrients. I was just eating some very, very basic foods that weren't actually nourishing my body. And I was working out so hard and waking up at 4 a.m. and cranking pre-workout that was like fatiguing my adrenals. And so, of course, my body had no other option than to crash. And that's kind of the way that I see a lot of people in the fitness industry, taking that route, is like the best way to wreck your hormones is to overwork and undernourish. And unfortunately, like women get it the worst specifically, and they're targeted so much more than we are with like their body image and to work really hard. And obviously it's another conversation of like how they need to align with their cycles. And it's not that simple of like what the fitness industry preaches, which is exactly that. Like basically work hard and don't eat very much and you'll be able to get your dream figure. And so like we're being marketed and sold on that. And I just found like when I kind of did the opposite and just actually learned to listen to my body and heal through like focusing on nutrient rich foods, that I started to feel so much better. And I just found a new way to like listen to my body. And so, yeah, I just ended up like doing that for a few years, and I quit taking supplements entirely because I started diving into the world of functional medicine and learning about artificial sweeteners and flavors and learning about how the flavors impact our post-ingestive feedback loop. And then I had that moment, like that light bulb moment, that I was like, I miss taking supplements. Like supplements do have a lot of value, because what I saw is like I was able to heal myself through supplements as well, through like different herbal remedies and things that I learned through that. And, what I ended up happening, like I had SIBO basically was like the final straw for me, which for those listening, it's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it's a very, very common thing that most people don't get diagnosed in Western medicine, unfortunately. Will just be labeled as someone with IBS. And that's what happened to me. It was like I had IBS, but IBS is more of like a symptom, basically just saying like your gut's not digesting food properly and we don't know why. I mean, that's what the diagnosis should be. And it turns out that I think it's upwards of like 70% of people that get an IBS diagnosis actually have SIBO, which is kind of just like SIBO is basically the bacteria seeps out into the small intestine where it shouldn't be. And the main symptom is like I'm bloated no matter what I eat because you have too much of a bacterial overgrowth. And so then you just produce like excess methane or hydrogen gas and you get that excessive bloating. And so it's an easy test to do also for people listening. It's just a breath test. They could type in SIBO breath test. If you kind of are having chronic gut issues, I think it's a good place to start because so many people have it. And I found that I had it, and like then it sent me on a journey of like, wow, okay, I just use supplements to heal me. What if I could make fitness-based supplements that could actually help people heal and not hurt them? And so that's why like our mission and our motto at Kono is like if someone asks me what I do, I say we help people heal by putting health first. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Wow. I
That's
love
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
I will say I also had SIBO a couple of years ago. When I
Did you?
started,
Yeah, so
I started
common.
working with the functional doctor and ran a bunch of different tests. That was one of the ones we did. Came back positive. I forget if it was, what was it? What did you say? Hydrogen or
Methane.
methane? Yeah, I forget which one it was, but yeah, ended up doing a bunch of herbals and stuff like that, and took care of that. But
Yeah, so the methane dominant one usually causes more constipation, is what you see, like constipation or a lot of excessive gas. And the hydrogen dominant one usually is more like diarrhea is your main symptom. So it's just the different types of gases that the excess bacteria produce in the small intestine.
it's so interesting. I think I had methane based off of those descriptions.
Right. And that's the more common one. Most people
Really
do.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you have this idea to basically create Kono Nutrition, right? So walk us through this process.
Yes. Love telling this story. I was actually taking a nap after I was listening to a podcast, and I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time. And I heard this podcast about how to find your purpose. And at the time, I was working in medical device sales, like feeling very not aligned with what I was doing and what my purpose was, because I was like, I knew that I was really good at things in the health space. And just like I had always been the friend in college that people looked to for advice on health and wellness and stuff like that, just because again, like life qualified me for it. I had been in that space my entire life. I just had looked into things more than most people. And I was listening to this podcast about how to find your purpose. And have you guys heard of it? It's called the Japanese Ikigai.
I have, yes.
I have
Yeah,
not.
it's
Yeah.
like the most beautiful thing that I have heard, and it truly changed my life forever. And it was, if you want to find your purpose, it's a crossroad of these four things. And it's, what am I good at? What do I love to do? What does the world need? And then how can I get paid for it? And so I heard that on a podcast, and I just kind of like sat with that and was like, wow, I really want to start living a life more in alignment with who I am and what I want to do. Because again, I was working in like the Western medicine industry and not feeling super aligned with it and starting to move away from it. And I went and took a nap like later that day after listening to that podcast. And literally the idea just like came to me while I was napping of like, what if I miss taking pre-workouts and like that ritual of like drinking something before the gym. And like, I love working out and I was really passionate about that. And so we launched the product or functional pre-workout because I was like, I want to make one that's actually healthy for people and like doesn't contain any artificial ingredients. And this was back in, I started formulating it in 2017 or 18. So this was back before anyone was like talking about natural flavors.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm gonna make one with fruit powders. Like my whole thing was like every ingredient had to have a purpose for your health. Like we're not gonna put anything in there that doesn't actually boost your health. Because again, if I'm like going to work out, I want it to increase my life value and increase my health, not just like increase my performance, which of course it's supposed to do that. But there was a huge disconnect there. And so that was like the concept of how it started. And we launched with just a single product back then with that product. And unfortunately, like, I guess what happened is I was just making it in my kitchen for like 2 years because I didn't actually like take it to light of like, oh, I'm going to like go all in with this as a business and stuff like that. I was like, I just want to see if it works. And so I just like started making it for me because I knew that like I wanted it. and maybe other people would want it. And so like it was a really slow process. It took me a long time to figure out how to formulate it. And I was just like putting it in baggies and giving it to friends and stuff like that. And then it just kind of spread from there and ended up turning into a business because, again, it aligned with like, what was I good at? What do I love to do? What does the world need? And then maybe I can make some money for it if I'm lucky.
If you care about what goes in your body, you should also care about what your body is laying on every single night. That's why I'm so glad I found Birch. I've been sleeping on my Birch mattress for a while now, and I can honestly say it's the most comfortable, supportive sleep I've ever had. But beyond comfort, what really sold me was what it is made out of. Birch mattresses are crafted with organic cotton, natural latex, and wool. No sketchy chemicals, no off-gassing, and no flame retardants or synthetic junk. That is huge for me. I want my bedroom to be as non-toxic as my kitchen, and Birch makes that possible. It's also cooling, which I didn't realize would make such a big difference in how rested I feel in the morning. If you have allergies as well, the wool is naturally hypoallergenic, which helps a ton. Plus, they give you a 100-night risk-free sleep trial, free shipping, and a 25-year warranty. It comes rolled up right to your door and takes minutes to set up. I want all my listeners to enjoy a deep, restful night's sleep with a new mattress from Birch. So go to birchliving.com/clean kitchen for 27% off site-wide, plus 2 free Eco Rest pillows with every mattress purchase. That is birchliving.com/clean kitchen and get 27% off site-wide, plus 2 free Eco Rest pillows with every single mattress purchase.
Yeah. Wait. Okay. So you were making this in your kitchen. Walk us through that because that's fascinating. Do you have any like chemistry background? How did you know what the ratios were? How did you figure that out?
It's just constant research. Yeah. I just like dove into it. I just wanted to learn everything about it. I mean, I studied exercise physiology, so I knew like, and then like, I just knew a lot about ingredients. And so I just like, put my nose down and did research of like, what are the clinical doses of all these ingredients? And I just like did as much research as I could. And I found that like some of the ingredients have a really cool synergistic effect, right? So they work together in unison. And so I just like, I mean, I reformulated, I don't even know how many hundreds of times before I landed on like the formula that we have today. And even then, like we're constantly changing our formulas because it's like if I hear of something that is new and has research behind it and that I think is better and that I believe in, then I'm always going to try to do that, right? Where it's like, if I believe in this and I believe it's the right thing to like help people heal, then like we're going to change it. We're going to pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
And what is like the current formula of the pre-workout?
Yeah. So it's really cool. When we first launched it, it was again, like not many people were talking about like lion's mane mushroom and rhodiola root. And so we used all these like earth grown ingredients. And just to give you a little background on the supplement industry, like the supplement industry is not regulated at all by the FDA. So it allows people to essentially do whatever they want, put whatever ingredients they want in it. And due to that, it ends up being a very, very shady and kind of dark industry. And so what I found through research is that like most of the amino acids on the market were made from 3 things, and it's human hair, duck feathers, or pig skin, because amino acids are really high in like keratin. So keratin protein, you can break it down because like amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So you can break hair or feathers or skin down into amino acids a lot cheaper. And so like most of the like there's just so many like dirty sourcing secrets in the industry that I really wanted to shed light on. And so we made amino acids, but we fermented them. And so it goes through a fermentation process. And so we use citrulline to help with blood flow, and then the branched chain amino acids to help with performance and recovery. And that really prevents muscle tissue breakdown. So that's why it's like beneficial taking before exercise. And then we use lion's mane mushroom for cognitive focus, and then rhodiola root to help kind of balance the adrenals. Because what people don't realize is that like when you're working out, you're already sending your cortisol through the roof. And so by adding in a synthetic form of caffeine that's like 300 or 400 milligrams, you're just completely skyrocketing your cortisol to where your body has no other choice than just to crash. Like that's why most people get really, really tired after workouts and have a hard time recovering, is because it's just so much on the adrenals. And so we threw that in to really help balance it. And then we do use caffeine, but it's probably the coolest caffeine source on the planet. It's called guayusa tea. And it's grown in the upper Amazon rainforest in a garden that focuses on regenerative agriculture. And the garden is called the Ancient Chakra Gardens, where they only grow medicinal compounds that are associated with different chakras in the body. And it's grown only by the indigenous people there. And we source it directly from them. And what we found, because they really use it over there ceremonial, just like how in like Japan, they drink matcha ceremonial. In the Amazon, they drink this ceremonial, and they use it to like help with their creative process. And then what we found is we have clinical studies now on guayusa tea that does exactly that. Like it helps you become more creative, and it's more of a nootropic than it is of like feeling overly jittery. So it's a really cool source of caffeine. And we extract it and we standardize it to 30% chlorogenic acid, which is an anti-cancer compound, antioxidant polyphenol that's in, other teas and coffees. And just to give you an example, the highest source of chlorogenic acid that I found, other than guayusa tea, is coffee, and it's around 10%. And the guayusa tea is 30% chlorogenic acid. So it's like 3 times more antioxidant rich than coffee.
Wow. First of all, you just talking through that story is incredible. I think I could listen to you talk about guayusa tea or chakra, all the words you just said that I'm going to have to go look up after all day. So that was incredible to hear. But I think it speaks to the importance of the time that you spend on each ingredient. Like, you know exactly where each ingredient comes from and why it's included in each of your products. I do want to understand the sourcing a little bit, because this is something that I feel like needs some more light to be shed on it. Specifically with Steak and Shake, I'm sure you've probably been following all of the beef tallow back and forth, where they said it's cooked in beef tallow. It turns out it wasn't. They recently put out a statement that said they are switching their suppliers, and that takes time. Mm-hmm. Supply chain is a very complex thing, and there's a lot of time that needs to be put into it before you can just change from one product to another. So fully appreciate that. Talk to us about your process on sourcing the ingredients and what that looks like. How tough is it to get these top tier A-rich ingredients?
Very hard and very expensive, which is why most of the people don't do it. Yeah, I mean, that's really what takes years and years and years of research. And again, like when I initially launched, we just started with an organic green tea extract, which is great. Like, it's a great source of caffeine. But as soon as I heard about this other source of caffeine that I just became like in love with, I did that exact same thing. I was like, there was nothing wrong with organic green tea extract, but I knew that it could be a little bit better. And so we switched our entire supply chain due to that too. And it definitely just takes like an unwavering commitment, right? And that's where like I had, again, like maybe not even any intentions of turning this into like a full-time business. I did it as like a passion project initially. And I think that like that's where it's probably different, is like most people, their mission, their motto, it's like not health first, right? It's like profit first, it's flavor first, like whatever it is. But like, we just made such a huge commitment to like helping people heal, I think, because of what I went through. You know what I mean? Like I really, truly can resonate with people on not feeling good, because I've spent genuinely like majority of my life not feeling good. And now I know what it's like to feel really good. I just want to like help as many people feel really good as possible. And so that's really like where the commitment comes from to our supply chain. But to answer the question of like, how do we do it? It's just like years and years of research and networking with people and connecting and focusing on the farms. And like, we've just kind of set some ground rules that like, we're going to find regenerative agriculture as much as we can. We're going to find organic as much as we can. And we're just going to like do the best we can. And so that's really what we focus on, because I'm so big on sourcing like the food that I eat. Like, I know it's so hard to do, especially here in America. But like the two things that I try to find are like regenerative and organic. And so I just reflect that in our company, that we always try to find that as much as we can.
Yeah. It's like Kono is a mirror image of you and what you've built for yourself. That's just for specific products, is what you've built. So you have the pre-workout, the functional pre-workout, which I love that terminology too, because it's not just pre-workout. There's more to it than that. But you realize then that it's time to expand into other products. So you've got a bunch of other. Talk to us about that, like deciding where to focus your energy in terms of product expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's evolved as well, to the point now where basically I just ask myself the question, like, what do people need in order to heal the most? So that's the question that I constantly ask myself when it comes down to where I'm going to take things next with which products we come out with. And when I ask myself that question, like, what do people need the most in order to heal? Then it leads me to the next question of like, what are people most deficient in? And then it leads me to the next question of like, why are people deficient in this, right?
Mhm.
And so what we did next is we pivoted to a vitamin D3 and K2 product. And it's the number one vitamin deficiency in the world. And it's like, again, why are people deficient in that? Because we basically live in a cage all day and get artificial lighting that actually depletes your body of vitamin D even more. And we don't spend enough time outside. And it's really hard to get through diet. So basically, the research says that you can pretty much only get 10% of your vitamin D through diet, and 90% of it has to come through sunlight. And most of us aren't getting enough of that. And so that was the next product that we came out with. And then now we're building out magnesium, and then we built out the electrolytes to just get people minerals. Because again, like we are a mineral deficient society because of how depleted our soil is. So unfortunately, what we did is we sprayed our earth with over 6 billion pounds of pesticides annually all over the globe now. And there's another saying in Chinese medicine that I love, which is an organism that destroys its environment destroys itself. And it's exactly what we've done by spraying, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides everywhere all over our soil. Is it kills everything in the process. And so it kills the ecosystem of the soil. And not only does it grow nutrient poor plants, but it's also making us really sick in the process through other mechanisms of action too, where it's getting into our gut, and people forget that like our gut is an ecosystem in itself made of trillions of small bugs. And it's like, what if you break it down in the most simple form, like a pesticide means to kill pests. And it's like, right, we are made of pests. So it's like, what do we think it's going to do to us? It's kind of slowly killing us, unfortunately. And then it's depleting the plants as well. And I think that people just kind of forget this even in the first place, that like the plants are a living being connected to soil. Like that is their source of life. And the second that you pick that plant from the soil, from its life force, it's now dead, right? So that's why the best thing you can possibly do is eat local. And now the way that our agricultural system is set up is the average piece of produce now travels 1,500 miles to get to the grocery store. And by the time it even gets there, they looked at like, it was vitamin C foods. It was like leafy greens and citrus fruits. They had 70% less vitamin C 1,500 miles later than what they had from the point that they were picked. And so like the food that we're eating is kind of setting us up for failure. So that's why, unfortunately, we need supplements. Like, I wish that I could just go tell people, yeah, like, eat the best food you possibly can. But unfortunately, for most of us, it's still not enough. And so that's why I'm creating the products that I'm creating, is to just give people that additional support of minerals and things like that. And then obviously we expanded into protein powders just because I knew I could create some really good ones. So
Wait, so that's interesting. So is it basically like the longer the period of time from when something was picked to the time, I get it at Whole Foods, it's slowly losing its nutrients?
exactly. Because again, if you just think about it from the perspective of like plants are a living being.
Yeah.
And the way that they're alive is through the soil. Like that's what's giving them their nutrients, and they're connected by the roots to the soil. And so as soon as you've like disconnected that plant from the soil, you've taken it from its roots, you've taken it, think of it as like a baby being born, right? Like it's in the womb connected to the umbilical cord. The second it's born, it now has to get a different source of nutrients through breast milk and not through the cord anymore. It's just like a plant is the same thing. And I think we're so disconnected from our food supply that we oftentimes forget that that's the case. And so, yeah, now that plant is no longer a living being, it's dead. And of course, the longer it's like disconnected from its life, the more it's just going to die essentially. And the example that I love to give to people in this scenario to just like show how powerful plants can be and how much of a living being they are and how much of an energy they truly carry is like we have a whole classification of compounds called adaptogens. I'm sure you guys have both heard of adaptogens, right? And so it's like ashwagandha, rhodiola root, different types of mushrooms. Most people have heard of adaptogens now. And the way that adaptogens get their names is the keyword is adapt. So they're grown in really harsh environments. So like they grow in the middle of winter in Siberia, for example. Like rhodiola root is common for growing in Siberia in like high mountain climates and in harsh conditions. And so what it does is the plant has to now fight for its life to stay alive. So it had to adapt and overcome its environment. And so it was grown in like a stressful environment, but it actually made the plant stronger. So like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And because that plant now adapted to its environment, it's so nutrient rich that when we consume it, that's why it helps us adapt to our environment. So that's why rhodiola and ashwagandha are known to help us like adapt to stressful situations and help like decrease our cortisol, is because that plant, energetically speaking, had to do that same thing. And it's basically just like a transfer of energy into our body.
Wow. And then we get the benefits of that.
Exactly, which
Wow.
is awesome.
Yeah, that's
so
cool. I feel like ashwagandha has become so popular nowadays, especially like for that stress relief or like just like helping calm you down. Wow, that's fascinating.
I was going to talk about the protein powders. I wanted to pivot there a little bit. So you talked about how you expand into protein powders. You have two different types on your website if you go there. And we're talking about it just a little bit at the beginning. So there's whey protein powder, and let me know if I get this right. And then there's the beef protein powder. What's the difference between the two? And what do you mean when you say beef protein powder?
Yes, yeah, phenomenal question. So whey protein comes from dairy. That comes from the milk of the cows. And you guys remember that, like, there was like, it was like a nursery rhyme or something. Was it like the three little bears or one of those that was like eating our cheese and curds and whey? You guys remember
Oh,
which
no, I
I'm
don't
talking
remember
about?
that. No.
Sounds familiar. I don't
Okay,
know.
but it was like eating our curds and whey. Maybe it was like Miss Little Piggy or something. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But whey is essentially a byproduct of cheese making. And so they use it in other cultures as like a high protein snack that's a byprocess of making cheese. And then you just dry it into a powder, but it comes from the milk of cows. And most of the whey proteins on the market are whey protein concentrates. And when you concentrate the whey, you unfortunately still like concentrate some lactose and the casein protein, which is, what usually bugs people in dairy products. And so the way that we made ours is it's a whey protein isolate. And when you isolate it, it removes all of the lactose and the casein. And when most people isolate a whey compound, what happens is they do it through like a high heat process. And it unfortunately like destroys a lot of the natural enzymes that are occurring. And then you end up still not digesting it that well. And what we do with ours is there's no heat. It's just a microfiltering process. And so it isolates the whey, still removes the casein, still removes the lactose. So it's lactose free, but it still comes from milk. And there's definitely some people that still have like a dairy allergy out there. So that's why we made the beef protein, is the people that just want a completely dairy free option that serves a little bit of a different purpose too. So I guess whey protein is really, really high in the amino acid leucine, which is great at stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So like that's why whey protein has been so popular in the fitness community and bodybuilding forever, is because it's like the king of building lean muscle. And the beef protein isolate has been kind of blowing up lately in the world of supplements. And beef protein isolate is kind of a misleading terminology, because I guess if I just say beef protein isolate, how do you guys think it's made?
Just beef.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's not really like that. So the way that beef protein isolate is made is it's made from taking the end bones of the cattle. And so they keep the meat still attached onto the bones, because that's typically like what people throw out, right? They don't want to use like the little scrap pieces, or they turn it into like stew meat or whatever, because it's really hard to like pick it all off the bones. And what beef protein isolate now is it's really cool actually and very nutrient rich, but they take the bones and they then, leave the bones and the meat and the collagen tissues all attached to it, and then send it through an extraction process and then dry it out. And so that's why it contains like a lot of gelatin and glycine and collagen, which are really balancing for the whey protein that's dominant in leucine. And it's like almost like our ancestors knew this forever, right? That's why they utilized all parts of the animal, because it turns out if you eat too much leucine, aka like too much muscle meat or just too much dairy products, you can actually age faster. Because what happens is like leucine stimulates a process called mTOR in the body. And when you chronically elevate mTOR, it can lead to aging. It's why there's people out there like Dr. David Sinclair at Harvard. He's like the leading researcher in longevity and anti-aging right now. They're like prescribing pills like rapamycin for people, which actually suppresses mTOR. And so by chronically elevating mTOR, you can unfortunately lead to aging. But the best way without taking a prescription to balance out mTOR is actually take foods or like bone broth and collagen because it's high in the amino acid glycine. And glycine is very anti-aging and kind of does the opposite that leucine does. And so again, it's like our ancestors had all this ancient wisdom where they knew to like eat the muscle meats for muscle and for leucine, but then to also use the bone broth and the tissues to counterbalance that amino acid profile and be really rich in glycine, which is supportive of like the tissues of the body and very high in collagen. So that's why we kind of launched like the two different options for people is they also like, I mean, I take both of them for that reason because they really balance each other out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. For someone that doesn't have any issues with digesting dairy or lactose, where would you recommend that they go? Which one or the other?
Yeah, I would say it depends on what their goals are. If you're really focused on like building lean muscle mass, then the whey protein isolate is really awesome for that. And I digest it really well, even times where I had SIBO and like could not eat dairy at all. I still could do the whey protein isolate and tolerate that well, which was awesome. But like I said, I utilize both because I kind of view the beef protein as more of like a, so what it is actually like our version I can speak to specifically is it ends up being around 70% collagen by nature, but it comes from the bones, which is really unique because most of the collagen peptides on the market are actually from like hooves and nails and hides. And the way that they have to process it and extract it is usually through like an acid bath. And so it's like an enzyme acid bath extraction method that's obviously very harsh and not overly natural. And the way that we do it is we just take those end bones and we run it through a hot water and steam extraction. So no solvents, no chemicals at all. And you're getting a natural abundance of collagen through bone broth because you simmer the bones down but leave the meat attached. So it's still a complete protein source, whereas most collagen powders aren't. Most collagen powders don't contain leucine, and so you can't consider it a complete protein source, meaning it contains all the essential amino acids. And so it's a really cool call. Like I don't even know how to market it yet because we just came out with it. But I was talking to someone and they're like, maybe you should just call it like a collagen plus product, Because it
Yeah.
is like it's mostly collagen, but it also contains the beef, the bone broth, the collagen tissues, but all from a very, very high quality source, the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember doing a video about that like a little while ago about collagen because obviously like collagen has blown up recently over the past few years. And a lot of people don't know like where it's actually coming from and how it's actually being made. So yeah, I think maybe including collagen on there somewhere, like collagen plus, I like that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
definitely a
seriously.
buzzword.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we kind of say we just like essentially tell people exactly what it is. We're like there's only a handful of companies that have beef protein isolates right now, but when you look at the ingredients on theirs, it says beef protein isolate, which again like isn't really telling the full story. So what we say is we say grass-fed beef, and then in parentheses it's like from the beef protein isolate, like the meat itself, from the collagen tissues, and from bone broth protein because that's truly what it is, right? You're just using the bones and the meat.
Yeah. Does collagen fall into that same category of supplements where it's not regulated by the FDA, so companies don't have to disclose that?
Every single supplement,
All of them. Okay.
all supplements like are not regulated at all. So this is kind of like where the loophole came in of like natural flavors and things like that, right? Is like, no one has to disclose really what's on their label. And same thing with like proprietary blends. So you can just put proprietary blend on the label of a supplement and you don't have to actually disclose the amount of each ingredient because it's in a proprietary blend that essentially is designed to protect the company itself, but obviously does not help the end user at all because they don't even know what's in the product. And it's just kind of like, I mean, I think it's a blessing that the FDA does not regulate the supplement industry
Yeah.
because I don't want the FDA regulating it because we
Yeah.
know how that goes too sometimes.
Mhm.
But then that's why it's so important to like build trust with the company that you're buying your supplements from. And unfortunately, like the University of Missouri did a study and found that 60% of the Amazon supplements are completely counterfeit. Like
Yeah.
didn't even actually have the compounds that they were claiming to have in it. And so they
Wow.
ordered a wide variety of supplements off Amazon. And on Amazon, to be a seller on Amazon, it requires a third-party testing certificate. And so like these companies are clearly just very fraudulent, making up the third-party certificate, submitting it, and just selling counterfeit supplements on Amazon. Like it's a really dark industry because there's a lot of money in supplements to be made. It can be very lucrative. And so people jump into it for the completely wrong reasons, unfortunately.
Circling back to the natural flavors too, because that's something honestly I learned about like very early on in my health journey when I started reading ingredients and stuff. Talk to us a little bit about natural flavors and like what actually goes into that for a lot of companies, because obviously you don't use any natural flavors in your products, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
wild.
it's so wild because it's basically too hard to tell if it's good or if it's bad,
Yeah.
because it doesn't automatically mean like, oh, just because it's natural flavors, there's poison in this, right?
Yeah.
Where like
Yeah.
a lot of people have made it out to be like that. But oftentimes what it does is it protects the business owners. So there are probably some businesses out there that are just using natural flavors that are legit like 100% fruit extracts, but maybe in a certain ratio that they don't want other people to know about to like steal their flavor process. So it might be easier for them to just say natural flavors. And so it definitely does that. But what I found is that like natural flavoring, the only difference between natural flavoring and artificial flavoring is that it comes from something in nature. And I think you just recently did a video on that, Kyle, and you did a really good job of like explaining
Yeah.
that,
Thank you.
because that's the only difference, is that it comes from nature, but then they can still take it to the lab, add oftentimes like 50 ingredients. And usually what we see is like propylene glycol and like different preservatives and additives and maltodextrin or corn syrup and things like that that don't have to be disclosed, and that help, advance the sweetness of the flavor profile. And so it might like come from a strawberry, but then they add in all those ingredients to like totally enhance the flavor. And they don't have to disclose any of it because it ends up being like a proprietary thing to protect the company. But it just ended up being a disaster. And again, people just aren't really caring about other people's health too much. They're focused on protecting their own business. And so they get to use that terminology.
Yeah. And that's what's, like you talked about earlier, like that's what's getting us addicted and hooked on so many of these foods. So it's definitely something to be careful about. I tell people all the time, just because it something has natural flavors, it's not like automatically like the worst thing ever. I normally tell people, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, but I normally tell people, look at the other ingredients in the products. If the other ingredients are real, organic, whole foods, then maybe those natural flavors are a little bit better. But what would you recommend doing? I normally tell people as well, like to reach out to the company. And if they are able to tell you what exactly is in those natural flavors, like I've had companies be like, no, we just use like real orange and lemon extract or something like that. And that's it. We don't add anything else to it. Where some companies will be like, oh no, we can't disclose that. It's proprietary.
Yeah.
So is reaching out to the company and kind of asking what's in their natural flavors a good thing to do?
I think it's probably the best thing to do. But I think you're right too, where it's like so many people, there's basically a saying that says like there's too many people majoring in the minors, where it's like if you're not just eating like all organic single ingredient foods and you're worried about a little bit of like natural flavoring in your healthier snack product, then you're probably stressing about the wrong things. And I think you're right by saying that it's like, if all the ingredients are, pretty good and organic, and like they're probably a company that cares a little bit more, and they're probably not totally screwing with you. But there's truly no way to tell, unfortunately. But again, like what I really did, and if you've had a chance to try any of the products, like people will be able to feel it in their bodies that it's real ingredients. And so like I think that we get as a society like way too caught up in like what does the science say, instead of like listening to our own body. Because like you'll oftentimes like taste something with the word natural flavors in it, and your body automatically knows it's not natural. You're like, that tastes way too sweet, or that
Yes.
tastes way too off to be natural. And again, it goes back to like we are intuitively designed like that. Like we have this process that's called the post-ingestive feedback loop, where we know that flavors are indicative of nutrients. And the best example I can give of that is like, have you guys ever had a homegrown tomato versus a store-bought
Yes.
tomato.
Yes.
When you grow like a homegrown tomato, it is like the sweetest, juiciest, most
Yeah.
flavorful thing in the entire world because you've picked it fresh off the vine and like it's so nutrient rich and it's so like red and it's, colorful. And so like colors and flavors are nutrients. And so you take a bite of that and it's like the sweetest, best thing you ever tried. And then you go buy a store-bought tomato and it has no flavor to it because there's no nutrients associated with it. And so like your body should be able to also like tell you and give you cues based on if something should like taste and has nutrients associated with it. And that was the biggest reason why I was like, we're going to stay away from natural flavors and just use real whole foods because real whole foods have this nutrient profile to it that aren't going to throw off people's post-ingestive feedback loop.
That's so interesting. I always thought I didn't like tomatoes growing up. And then our mom grew some tomatoes in our backyard. And she was like, eat a tomato. I'm like, I don't like tomatoes. I tried one. I'm like, it tastes like fruit because it's just sweet and delicious. I'm like, oh, I like tomatoes. And then I went and bought some from the store, the same like mini little tomatoes. And I was like, nope, I don't like these.
They suck. Yeah. I was the same way.
That's hilarious. That's crazy. Wow. And getting back, like listen to your body. Like, your body knows. So I feel like I'm very sensitive to like natural flavors too. Not even like I feel it in my body, but I taste it. I'm like, oh, that tastes fake. And your products are not fake. And yes, I have tried all of the ones that you sent me, and I appreciate you for sending me that. They're absolutely delicious.
Awesome, man. Yeah, super happy to hear that. It's crazy, dude. It's really hard, and we're inundated with so much health information that I just like totally empathize with people because it's like so overwhelming of where do I even start and what do I even do and who do I even trust and oh my gosh, vegetables are toxic. Oh wait, no, I'm not eating enough vegetables. And it's like people legitimately have no idea where to start. And that's why I think it's just like so important to maybe just like do the basics first and see how you feel and truly listen to your own body. Like I think that we're so inundated with an 24/7 onslaught of information that it's like too much for our brain to handle almost anything. And I think what it does is it causes people to lose trust in their own decision making and their own ability to even know how their body feels. And so it's like, how can we just tap into learning how to listen to our own body more? And that's the best answer you can possibly get because it's like the science is constantly conflicting. There's so much corruption in the food industry and in our government that it's like, okay, what do we trust then? And it's like, trust yourself because you'll know, like your body has the answers. But in order to like trust yourself, you kind of have to remove the fake stuff because because that's like it's tricking your body. And so that's why it's so sad what the food industry has done is they knew that like these flavors would throw off our body's ability to kind of trust itself. And so that's why everything is like created in this lab to hijack our body's own pathways and signals to be able to trust like when to get full and not overeat. And so that's why we overconsume. And so unfortunately, it's like if you just get back to eating the single ingredient foods, then you'll be able to kind of trust your body again and know how to eat intuitively.
Yeah. A lot of those food products, they're designed to trick you. Both on the front, on the marketing is designed to trick you, and the actual inside the box is designed to trick you. But I guess for someone that maybe has done this and they've started to feel better and they're enjoying their health and nutrition journey, where would you recommend them? Because you've become so knowledgeable, it feels like, on so many of these topics. Where would you recommend people spend their time researching? So is it social media? Do you have recommended sources that you trust more than others?
It's so hard. Yeah, it's really tricky. And that's where it's like, I'm obviously biased from the research that I've done too. You know what I mean? And what I think is really important is for people to like not give in to the algorithm. I mean, it's the same thing with like politics where it's like if I'm only following someone on one side of the spectrum and on one opinion, then the algorithm is just going to feed me more of that and make me even like more biased. And so what I try to do specifically is like I'll follow someone that maybe aligns more like how we do, much more on the holistic side. And I'll follow someone that's like a PhD that is basically saying artificial sweeteners are fine. You know what I mean? And I'll follow that just to like get some information on what he's saying and what the science says for me to then go like look into that myself and see if it does make sense. And so like I just kind of try to like gather a little bit more data from all sides of the coin, and then just like form my own opinion and what feels good for my own body. And I'm really a huge proponent of just like testing what works for you. And so like see if you notice a difference between eating organic, regenerative versus not and stuff like that. And my assumption is, from what I found, is like when you buy the highest quality food and put that into your body, you won't even realize that you could feel that good. And so it's like, then you get a taste of what it feels like to feel that good. And then there's your truth. Like it's all the truth that you ever need is like an N of one. Like, how does my body feel?
Yeah. It's funny you say all that because like that's exactly what I tell people, and that's exactly what I did as well. Like I just get all the information from all these different types of people, and then you form your own conclusions based on what you've read and what you've learned. And it sounds like we've kind of ended up in the same spot here, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. I have this this saying of like people's health journey, basically. And so it's like 4 or 5 step health journey that I feel like everyone goes on. And usually phase 1 is like, I want to get in better shape, or I want to change the way that I look. And it's usually phase 1. It all has to do with like, I want to look better. That's it for most people. And so then what do? They like go follow their favorite influencer and they start getting advice from them. And then maybe phase 2 is they realize that like, okay, now I want to start feeling better. They like maybe look into ingredients. And then phase 3 is like, oh my gosh, everything is poison and I need to like figure this out for myself. And they start being like an ingredient person and reading labels and flipping it around, everything like that. And then phase 4 is like, they finally start like, relying on themselves and trusting themselves and maybe not their favorite influencers so much. And they kind of get it and whatever. And then like the final phase, and where I see everyone that's like really beyond their health journey and have been in it for a long time, is that like, we're all our own healers. And like, it was me all along. And I think that that's where like I constantly see people go in the health space, is it almost turns like a little bit spiritual for people, right? Where they're like, wow, I can't believe that like I had the power to create this for myself and I healed myself. And that's why it's so funny. Like I said at the very beginning, like everyone I meet in the health space, like we all have the same story. And it's that like we figured out how to heal ourselves. And everyone can do that if they just put in the time.
Yeah. You just described my journey perfectly, besides the first part, because I was never really overweight or anything like that, but everything else, nailed it.
Yeah, everyone
You never wanted to look good.
I had to throw that in there. I guess, yeah, go to the gym, work out. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone wants to look good.
All right.
Exactly.
Debunked.
All 5. Yep. You got me.
All right.
You got me.
And then phase 6, become an influencer. You forgot that one, Alex.
Yeah, that's true. That's also true.
Yeah.
It's a good phase though, because phase 6 is essentially like give back to people.
Yes,
because
that's
now
true.
because that's really
Well
all that
said.
we're doing, right? Is like, now how can we help others? So there we go. We got phase 6.
Literally.
Bang. Yeah. It's true. It is true.
I wrote down one thing about inflammation, because I heard you talk about this on another podcast where you said, and I've read many times, that inflammation is the root cause of all disease, but you disagree with that. Tell me why you disagree with that.
This is a great question. Yeah. Everyone constantly says that like inflammation is the root cause of all disease. But if you just break it down to like, what is inflammation? Inflammation is just your body's response to something. And so the only reason why we get chronic inflammation is because we're ignoring our body, right? So like when you guys were struggling with your Crohn's, you would eat a certain food and it would inflame you more than others. So how could inflammation be the root cause when it was actually the food that you were eating that was causing the inflammation? Because inflammation is your body speaking to you. Like what I always tell people is like, in order to listen to your body speaks its own language. And all we have to do is learn to listen. And like our body gives us all the answers that we would ever need. And so the other example I give is like, if I roll my ankle, I get a swollen ankle and it gets inflamed. But the inflammation is actually a really good thing, because it's my body trying to heal itself. Like that's all that inflammation is. And what we've been taught in medicine is to believe that like inflammation is a bad thing, or any symptom is a bad thing, when in reality our symptoms are our saviors, and our symptoms are telling us like what we need to do in order to heal. And so that swollen ankle, now what most people do is they'll like put an ice pack on it right away. And we actually know now that that's a really bad thing, because you're stunting that inflammation process. And in the inflammation is where all the healing starts and begins. So like it sends blood and it sends fluid and it sends good signals and cells to that area. And that's why it inflames it, is to actually heal it faster. But now, unfortunately, we're stuck in a society of like chronic inflammation. And the only reason why someone would get chronic inflammation is if they got back up on that ankle and just never like gave it a break and rested it and continued to run. And unfortunately, like that's what we're doing on the inside of our body. We just can't see it, but like we're continuously eating the foods that are inflaming us. And so you're just like keeping these low levels of chronic inflammation, which then leads to disease. But it's like really it's the food that we're eating that is causing the inflammation. And because inflammation is a good thing, it's just like your body speaking to you, trying to heal itself.
Man, that's such a powerful analogy. The sprained ankle one. I've never heard someone describe inflammation internally in that way. And it makes so much sense if you're just constantly eating junk processed food that you're not allowing your body any time to heal. And it's no wonder you feel bad. Man, that's great. I love that.
It's like the number one shift that I feel like I made in my personal health journey is recognizing that my symptoms are my saviors. Like once I did that, everything changed for me, because it's like, oh, I have this little bit of pain, or when I eat this certain food, like where is that coming from? Why is this happening? And then you just like start listening to your body and asking questions, because like your body can't lie. Your body speaks its own language. It always speaks the truth. And we just like have to learn to listen to that. And then that's the moment that all of us could heal. And it's not even just with food and with health, it's with anything in our life. Like when you are meeting someone for the first time, or potentially like seeking a dating partner or getting into a relationship, you might feel like, like a little, like your body will like speak to you, where you maybe feel like anxious or not safe around someone or in an uncomfortable situation. And it's like, unfortunately, like the society that we live in has taught us to mask all of our pain, mask all of our symptoms, like take the ibuprofen, take the antibiotics, take the pharmaceutical pills. It's like, any sort of discomfort, we now mask our symptoms, when in reality, our symptoms are the biggest blessings.
They're just trying to tell us something, and we have to listen to them. That's something I've been working on a lot. Like even just since I moved down here to Florida, just like feeling more and going like, how do I feel? Whether it's I eat something, or I'm in a certain situation, or I'm hanging out with someone, like it's always just like, how am I feeling? Like what are the emotions that I'm feeling, or like physical things that I'm feeling throughout my body. I love that.
And how has it been? Like, what have you noticed? Do you feel more connected?
More connected, and just more clarity on the things that are right for me. And just like a lot of reflection, like on different events or different things that I attend, just like reflecting on it and like, okay, how was I feeling in the moment? And now like, how am I feeling afterwards about that? And just like, yeah, just getting a lot more clarity on life, both personal and professional things.
Mm-hmm. And then I think like it causes just you to live in more alignment, which then is like the best thing that you could do for your physical health too. Because I feel like also people forget, like the word disease just means dis-ease. Like it's a feeling of uncomfortableness or not feeling at ease with yourself. And it's such a big part of health that I feel like, again, is more like advanced on the end of the health journey spectrum. But it's like, as soon as you start realizing that too, that like living in alignment is also a powerful form of medicine.
Yeah.
Then, that's how you know you've made it. You've reached the final destination, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Alex, do you study etymology? Do you read a lot? Because you break down words quite frequently.
I don't.
No?
I don't really. It just like kind of comes. I don't like study it, but I love breaking it down, because I feel like what I try to do, again, is like break down maybe some more like complex health topics in a really simple way. Because I think Kyle, you do a really, really good job of this too, where it's oftentimes like people don't need to hear a doctor speaking about the science. They need to hear someone like telling a story, and it makes sense in a way that like maybe really resonates with them. And so I think that's all that I try to do, is like, how could I dumb it down in a way that just like really, really might make sense and resonate for someone to be able to change their life in a way that feels easy and not overly, overwhelming. Because if I go listen to like an MD speak, a lot of the stuff goes way over my head too. And I'm like, that's usually not who's out there changing lives. It's the people that can just like tell a story and break it down in a really simple way.
Yeah, the people that can tell a complex subject in a simple way are usually the ones that know it best. So it's funny you mentioned the word doctor there. So I've seen you break down a bunch of words before, and I was curious. I wanted to find one that maybe you hadn't broken down before, so that I could share that back with you. So have you ever looked up the
Yes,
origin of the word doctor?
I have not. I want to
Okay,
hear it
awesome.
now.
Perfect timing. So I went and looked it up. The word doctor comes from the Latin verb docere, which means to teach. So way back when it was originally, a doctor was just a teacher and not necessarily a healer. And in fact, the first word doctor, it was applied to scholars and educators in the 14th century. And then only later did it become associated with medical professionals. So doctors you're actually, according to the original word, you're a doctor because you are teaching people. So it's pretty powerful.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah, it is. It's like we've gone so far away from probably, well, yeah, what it means to be a doctor and even what it means to like, I often break this down as an analogy is like, we've all heard of the Hippocratic Oath,
Mm-hmm.
which is where doctors like wear the white coat ceremony and they swear in. And the first thing they say in the Hippocratic Oath is like, first, I will do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hippocratic Oath comes from Hippocrates, right?
Mm-hmm.
The father of medicine. And Hippocrates was like the ultimate holistic health master.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like, here we are still honoring Hippocrates and speaking about the Hippocratic Oath and like swearing in as physicians when we're not necessarily following any of his other teachings and
Mm-hmm.
what he talked about. And so, like, his famous quotes is like, let the food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And like, he would all like, that was what he was about. And his healing wisdom was mostly through natural remedies. And here we are breaking down the Hippocratic Oath and just like completely dishonoring all of his work. And it's like, first, do no harm. And I'm sure you guys have heard this, but now like prescription pills and basically medical intervention is how they classify it, is the fourth leading cause of death in the US.
Wow.
And what's first? As I've heard you talk about it before.
Basically now it's heart disease, but technically food, right?
Food,
So
yeah.
it's food is the number one killer on earth now. There was a study published in the Lancet journal because food is what ultimately leads to all disease, right? So now we have like quantifiable data that shows food is the number one killer in the world
Yeah.
for the first time ever, right? It's like we've always had the issue of the opposite of like scarcity and
Yeah.
maybe not getting enough food and starving. And unfortunately, now it's swung so far in the opposite direction that we're over consuming to
Mm-hmm.
the point of eating ourselves to death, which is just, it's really sad.
Yeah. Do you think there's a like kind of a change happening though, especially like with RFK coming in and a lot of these ingredients getting banned and things like that?
I do. I
Yeah.
do feel like there's a major shift happening, but unfortunately, there's also like a major resistance to it because of how people have politicized everything. And it makes me so sad that like health became this political thing where it's
Mm-hmm.
like now it's almost like you have to be on a certain team to care about your health, which is a huge bummer. And recently, like I'll just say this, in the past week, I've probably had 5 friends reach out to me that either they or a loved one have just gotten diagnosed with cancer
Man.
in the past like week. And this is what I always tell people is like the MAHA movement is not anything to do with like politics or anything like that. It is everything to do with your loved ones. Because you don't have to be a part of like in alignment with the MAHA movement to know that people are suffering. Like all you have to do is be a human being and open your eyes and like look around at your loved ones. And they're probably getting more sick, right? It's now 42% of Americans are now getting diagnosed with cancer. It's like getting close to half of our population. And so like maybe we just need to have a little bit more empathy and come at it from a place of love a little bit more. And even like a lot of our colleagues in the health space, I feel like could do a little bit better job of coming from a different energy about it, because I think what's happened is we're so frustrated and fed up with our government and with the industry that we're like, yes, finally someone's talking about it. And we're almost kind of like trying to shove it down people's throats, which is not the way that it's going to be receptive for all people. Cause like the only way it's going to happen where like everyone can like fully come together is if it's from a place of love and we just like want to help people.
Yes. Extremely well said. Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. Yeah. Sometimes people are optimizing for views or clicks on a lot of the content that's been put together, and that's not the way to go about it. I don't know if you guys really recently saw, I think it was this week, there was a hearing in Texas where there was a proposal to not allow SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, to be spent on soda and candy. And a representative from the American Heart Association was there fighting back against it, promoting SNAP being used for candy and soda. And if you can't look at that and see that the system is broken, then I don't know what else to tell you. That was just a perfect encapsulation to me of this is broken.
What was he arguing it because it was like because those foods are just so cheap and that's all they can afford?
They said that it would make groceries more expensive for families that can't afford it.
Right. And this has been happening forever. I mean, there was an example when like a policy got placed to label foods as GMO. So we have to now label foods as GMO or non-GMO. And lobbyists went and lobbied against it, basically saying we shouldn't have to do that because if we label things as GMO, people aren't going to want to eat that food. And we're like, yeah, that's the point. Like people need to know what this is. And it's like our system has been like that for so long. And they spent over $10 million lobbying against the GMO policy.
Huh.
And it's like, just like, we need to know that. That's something very important for people to know if their food has been genetically modified or not. And so again, like there's being a lot of light and attention shed to these issues recently, which is amazing, but it's been going on in the background for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I've seen like on certain products, like I know specifically on goldfish, like if you turn it over, look at the ingredients, but then under the ingredients, it says like this product contains genetically engineered food ingredients or something like that. Do you know if is that the same as GMO?
I think it's a different loophole, basically.
Of course.
So there's so many different like loopholes that the FDA has basically approved of. So this is another one that's getting like light and attention right now. Have you guys heard of the GRAS statement, but the generally recognized as safe? So this is the main reason for this. So the US has over 10,000 approved food ingredients, and most other countries have around 600 to 700. And the reason why we have over 10,000 is because the FDA basically just got like too busy or understaffed or tired of doing this. And they gave the ability to the food industry to self-regulate. So now they can basically just bypass it, doesn't actually have to get FDA approved. They can just fill out this claim called generally recognized as safe, which stands for GRAS. And essentially they don't have to submit anything to the FDA. They just have to conduct their own studies and say this food is generally recognized as safe. So most of the food ingredients out there have not actually ever even been studied in human clinical trials. And they just get this loophole called GRAS, where they just get to basically bypass and do their own studies and say, yeah, it's good. So that the FDA, who is the Food and Drug Administration, who is supposed to regulate food and drugs, gave the ability to food companies and drug and device companies to be able to self-regulate themselves. So there's not even that much regulation happening right now in the FDA, which is why, it's one of the roots of everything being so broken.
Yes. I think when you talked about it before, people coming at this from an aggressive standpoint or being loud about it, I think it is because when you start to peel back the layers, you find out things like this and you're like, how is this possible? How can this be the way that we're governing our food? And that does make a lot of people frustrated. And I think what we can do is do a better job of maybe communicating that. But if you're shedding light on GRAS, which I think is great, I don't even know if people call it GRAS, I call it GRAS.
Yep.
Then that is going to help, and that's going to get the word out there, and people are going to be more knowledgeable about that. So it's going to take some time and a lot of work, but I do believe that hopefully the trend is in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, I think it's a normal human experience to get angry when you find out about that. And I think that anger drives people into action. So it's not necessarily like a bad emotion for us to feel. Like, I think that we forget that, where it's like, yeah, it's okay. Maybe it should elicit a little bit of an emotional response for you because you're like, things are not as they seem. And that's okay. But I think that in order to actually create change, it's like you can't fight anger and hatred with anger and hatred.
Yes.
Like the only thing that you can fight anger and hatred with is love. And it's like what anyone that's ever changed the world, right? They have done it from a place of love.
100%. Yes. I love that. All right.
I think we should end it there. That was beautiful.
That was beautifully said. Well, we end every episode with dessert here. So dessert is something that you did this week, you learned this week, a product you tried, anything that is going on that you kind of just want to share that didn't necessarily fit into our podcast episode, but we thought it's a good way to kind of capstone each episode that we do. So we'll give you some time to think. Kyle and I will go first. It's quick, whatever it is, and then we'll end with you, and then we'll sign off there. So I'll kick it off, Kyle, and then I'll pass it to you. I spent about an hour and a half the other day just putting mulch out, and it just felt so good to be outside doing yard work that it was just like encouraging me to be out and being physical. Like any sort of weightlifting I do is inside and it's in a contained environment. And this was just outside in the yard. And man, it just reminded me just how good I felt walking away from that being outside and doing physical work is a blessing. So that's my dessert for the week. I love doing some yard work.
That's great. I started working out outside with Dan, who Alex met when he was here. There's something about working out, like doing physical labor or working out outside. Like it's next level.
Yeah, it is. I felt it. Immediately felt it. It was cool.
It boosts the testosterone. That's why.
Is that what it was?
Makes you feel like, yeah, it is. Like the sunshine and combination of movement boosts your testosterone way more.
I had no idea. It was shocking to me how much I felt better, especially after being inside throughout winter, being outside for the first time. That was like the first big, nice day. So yeah, do something outside.
You got to set up an outdoor gym, Kevin.
I do. Absolutely do.
Yeah, it's the move.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, what do you got for us?
My dessert was something that I learned last week while I was in California for Expo West. I was talking with the founder of Just Ingredients, which also is like supplement, protein powders, all that sort of thing. But they're coming out with a clear protein. Have you heard of this, Alex?
I have.
So this was my first time learning about this clear protein. It's almost like more similar to like an electrolyte drink, I would say, but it has protein, it has whey protein in it, at least for the ones that I was sampling. But Just Ingredients, they're coming out with a clear protein, and apparently in the manufacturing process, you need like this defoaming agent because of the way that the whey is mixed with the water, I guess. I don't know the exact process there. But you need this defoaming agent, and a lot of companies will add vegetable oils that acts as the defoaming agent, but they don't have to list that as an ingredient. So basically, when they started formulating this product, they were going through the process, and their manufacturers were like, "Yeah, you have to use a vegetable oil." And she's like, "No, like I'm not going to do that." So I think they tried olive oil, they tried avocado oil, and it didn't work. And then they tried MCT oil, and then that did the trick. So that worked. And yeah, I just thought like that was just super interesting to me, that it's like something involved in the process to make the product doesn't even have to be listed as an ingredient. So I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And it also happens all the time where like your manufacturing partners will be like, well, this is the only way to do it. And they try to do that with me forever, where it's like, this is the only way, you have to use this ingredient. And you just have to fight back and be like, no, we don't. There's a way. Like there's always a way.
Was there a specific ingredient like that they really kept like pushing back with, and you're like, no?
Oh, for sure. Like they always would try to get us to use like a gum or a filler basically in our pre-workout. When we first launched, they were kind of like, you have to have something to make the powder blend, especially when using fruit powders, because those are like more real and they'll clump up and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, you have to use something. And this is where most people use like silicone dioxide or something like that to help preserve it and not clump up. And so what I found and what we actually use, which I believe to be like a superfood, is bamboo. Because bamboo is nature's highest source of silica.
I asked you about that when you were here. Yeah.
Yeah. So silica has some really, really cool properties from traditional Chinese medicine, where silica pulls fluid into your tissues. And so it's really, really hydrating. And so we use silica in our pre-workout and in our electrolytes to help hydrate the hair, skin, and nails. And this is why people have been putting cucumbers under their eyes for thousands of years, is because the silica content pulls water into your skin and helps it give you that more like hydrated, dewy, glowy look. And there's some really, really cool science on it, where basically when you consume silica, because it's the third most abundant trace mineral in the body, you stimulate these compounds that are called like glucosoglycamines, and they hold 3,000 times their weight in water. And so they stimulate these like water binding molecules. And that's what helps your body like retain the water so much in your fascia and your hair, skin, and nails and tissues. And so it's just like an awesome, awesome ingredient that I've never seen anyone else use before in an electrolyte. And that's why we chose to put it in there. And it also helps the powder blend better. So I was like, oh,
Win-win.
yeah.
Man, that's fascinating.
Yeah, you
Super
are a wealth
cool.
of knowledge. That's insane that you were just able to riff on that and give us that much valuable insight. That was awesome.
Alex has been giving us dessert this entire podcast.
I know
Kevin.
that's
Dude, yeah, what do I need? One more thing. The only thing I guess just like on a personal note is, I guess my dessert of the week would be like, I recognize how much I need human interaction for my overall health, because I live alone, I live at home, and like I'll just sit in my office and work so much. And it's like, even from me going to a coffee shop and just getting that like energetic exchange with other humans uplifts me so much. And so I've just been realizing how much, like, oftentimes I think we get drained from social interaction, and I maybe swung too far in the opposite direction and now need to kind of find a good middle ground of just like being around other humans, and what it does for my health like is so powerful.
100%. Yep. I think we were meant to be in communities, live in packs. It's like very animalistic, but I think it's so true. And you need that. You need people around you. Good. Surround yourself with good people that are going to help you be a better person. I love that. That's a perfect dessert.
Yeah. Even if it is going to coffee shops too, like that's something that I've just recently started doing. Like if I just need to get a few hours of work done, I'll go to a coffee shop. It's just like, it's so different than working by yourself in your apartment or house. Something about
I think it's truly like an energetic exchange with people. You know what I mean? You're just kind of like in it, and there's just a certain feeling to it when you're like at home, isolated, alone. It's just such a different feeling, you know? And I think it's really important. Like you said, like even if it's not working with friends or people that you even know, it's just like being around other people.
Yes.
So on that note, we got to buy some land and start a group community.
It's only a matter of time. Hey, you said Costa Rica, right? I think you mentioned Costa Rica.
Gotta go to Costa Rica where the food is good, the water's warm.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't beat it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, this was an amazing conversation. Appreciate you so much for coming on. We will. So can we get set up like with a discount code or something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been meaning to tell you that. Yeah, we'll just do Clean Kitchen. We'll get people a discount code. It'll be 10% off any regular purchase, or if they start a subscription, it'll be 25% off.
Perfect.
On the subscription. So we'll hook people up with a good code.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get all that set up before this episode launches. So check the description for all that information, for a link to Kono with my discount code. And then I wanted to mention, you also have a book on Amazon, right?
I do. Yeah, the book, it's just called Eat Your Medicine. And it's essentially like how to grocery shop for the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. So super simple, just an easy book. Like, what does each food do for my body? Because I think if we can talk to people about like not only what to eat, but why to eat certain foods, because when you attach that why to it, I think that's what actually elicits some good change in people, is to help them actually understand it. So yeah, the book is just Eat Your Medicine by Alex Conley. It's on Amazon. My Instagram is Alex D Conley, and then it's just Kono, Kono Nutrition is the Instagram page there, and then just kononutrition.com for the website.
Awesome. Thank you
Make
so
it nice
much,
and easy.
Alex.
We'll link it all in the description. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks guys for having me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Alex.
Thank you for listening to the Clean Kitchen Podcast. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Mike Frey. If you like this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. The Clean Kitchen Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.